For those of you who missed the last video, we are N2P, negative to positive. We do a podcast, well, every blue moon at the minute, but we normally do a regular podcast talking about mental health. But obviously we can't get together, so we're having to do this in this wonderful world of Zoom. Every podcast I'm joined by my good friends. I've got Tim. Right, I did this before, so I've got Tim there, and I've got Matt down there. So we just get together, we have a bit of a catch up.
Right.
We talk about our stories and go through ups and downs of our lives and how mental health has changed us as people, and we just talk about kind of open and honest things. So if you saw the last one, it was me and Tim. We had a good chat, good catch up, but we've got Matt here this time. So we're back as a threesome. That's what she said. So we're back as a threesome. How you been, Matt? We didn't catch up last time. How's lockdown? How's this? How's Laura, by the way? Everything all right?
Yeah, Laura's better now, better. I mean, she had some symptoms of the lovely coronavirus. I actually had it as soon as we'd finished work, believe it or not. And they said, oh, if you pop, I started to feel really, really ill. I was all right after a week or so, no taste or smell for 10 days. Laura's still on with a no taste or smell. So, yeah, interesting, isn't it? Really strange at the minute, being locked up in your house, and yeah, everybody at work's still in touch, and everybody saying, oh, well, we need something to do. Come and look after my kids, please. You know, where people are saying, oh, they're looking for time to fill in the day, where we need more time. It's very, very stressful at the minute with 2 kids in the house, you know, for all hours of the day, apart from your hour going out for a little walk and playing in the garden. It's a nice day, but it's not ideal.
It's horrible, isn't it, with it being like nearly 20 odd outside, and you can't really go out and you know, hit the beer gardens and I don't know, do what you would normally. But how are you, Tim? It's been a week.
Very well, thank you. Yes.
I'm guessing not much changed.
No. Enjoyed trundling around the East Riding countryside, all nice and flat on my bike yesterday, so that was nice. But yeah, you get your hour, don't you? And then back home.
Absolutely. Yeah, same here, mate, to be fair. Not a lot, really. Few kind of gym sessions, trying to keep as active as I can. I'm actually losing weight. I can't really tell it, but I've gone from a downward angle, so you can't see my chins this time. The only problem is you can see my head a bit more. It's growing back. It's itchy as fuck at the minute.
I was going to say, did I not get the memo about haircuts?
Mate, honestly, it was a joke. It took me about half an hour just to get through it. But yeah, so I thought we'd just have a touch on a few things that kind of affect kind of mental health during lockdown. And a couple of my friends have actually been in touch and said about loneliness and stuff like that. Being lonely and stuff during lockdown, because it's hard to get out and it's hard to talk to people, and it's kind of affecting mental health. So I'd actually want to go to Tim first, because I suppose you handle kind of loneliness or not with your job. Tim's a vicar, by the way, and with your following, your flock, people will come to you out of loneliness, wouldn't they, really? And
you do.
How do you deal with that?
So we've had to radically change what we do. We have a cafe that's open during the week in one site, and a charity shop and a cafe at another site. So people come to us. Obviously, they can't actually do that now. So we're trying to make use of technology like everybody else. Lots of phone calls, text messages, emails. We're using a kind of a closed social media kind of system. So it's a little bit like Facebook, but it's only a very small kind of group.
Yeah,
I don't fully understand it. So it's using those things to try and keep people, well, I'm going to say connected. In my mind, it's a very second-rate connection, but actually it's what we can do now, and we've just got to do our best. I prefer conversations because it's a little bit more interactive and a bit live, but you don't always catch people at a good time to talk. So text messages is also a real good thing. WhatsApp, email. I think it feels very much like we're just holding things. I think we're going to struggle when we do all get back together to try and move forward. But yeah, that's what we're doing. Lots of phone calls.
What about you, Matt? How's kind of the kind of loneliness thing kind of obviously you've got a young family, so you've got your kind of hands full. But just in general with you, Matt, how did you find kind of the subject of loneliness? Obviously, you struggled with anxiety and getting out the house when you went through your kind of issues. How did the kind of loneliness play a part for you?
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult things about that time was obviously not like now where everybody has been told they aren't allowed out and stuff. I think when I didn't really properly leave the house for God, however long it was, nearly 3 months then. So I've got good practice at this. That wasn't much fun. It was quite a lonely place. I think because everybody else was just carrying on as normal as well. There was none of this technology either. There was no way of video calling. Even if there was, I don't think people probably would have, because everyone was carrying about their normal daily lives anyway. Then now it's very different with a young family as well. You mentioned about loneliness. The irony is that you can still be surrounded by people and sometimes probably feel a bit lonely as well.
Absolutely.
People have different worries, stresses, anxieties, and Ava's just over 3 months old now. She started teething, which is great fun, so she's screaming a lot. Oliver's 6, trying to get him to do schoolwork. That's good fun. So there's plenty of stresses to fill your day with still. And you do have those days, to be honest, where you feel a bit like, can we just have a bit of a break? Can we get away from things? And you can't. You've got responsibilities, and tough for grandparents as well, I think, at this time. I was speaking to my mum the other day. She's finding it difficult not seeing the grandkids. Yeah, Laura's mum and dad found it really difficult. Obviously, with Oliver, he kind of understands and he can talk to people on FaceTime or whatever, and he's not too bothered about it. It's a bit of a school holiday for him at the moment, so he's not really that bothered. And then, but they're missing out on Ava growing up a bit. At the time where they grow so quickly, they're struggling with that. So I think they're feeling a bit lonely and isolated. And then, then I think to my grandma, who's 93 years old, and she's at home on her own, and it's kind of no different for her at the minute. She shouldn't even have a mobile, let alone this ability to speak to people like this. So you ring her on the phone, and she's just kind of getting on with it as usual, business as usual, and she just don't quite understand why she can't go shopping with people and things like that. But other than the fact that if somebody goes around, obviously with her being vulnerable still, my mum and her sister are allowed to go around. They sit in the garden, they have a coffee, and she sits inside and have a coffee with her and stuff, and she kind of just gets on with it. It's the resilience of people her age, I think, when she's lived through a war, so staying in your house isn't really that bad, is it?
Another day at the office.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy though. I mean, are you guys still working, or are you not working at the minute?
No, mate. No, I'm.
So I'm working.
Yeah, Tim is working
remotely.
I think,
Do occasionally go out, but very rarely.
I'm furlough, mate. So I'm on that kind of type of thing. Do you know what? I was chatting to my mum last night. She was like, "Oh, well, why don't you go volunteer?" I'm like, "Do you know what? I actually miss the routine of going to work and feel like I've actually got a purpose and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Like getting up and actually doing something and having going to work. And do you know what? You get to miss, like, obviously, if you follow the podcast, I work in a quite a popular pub chain, shall we say. You miss that kind of interaction, don't you, with your work friends and stuff like that, and stresses of work, and you go home and talk shit about it, but then you actually miss that kind of stressful thing. And no, so I'm not working as such now, but I'm getting that itch where I need to do something. So I'm looking at a few things. But on the subject of that feeling lonely and stuff, did your kind of, when you went through your issues, your kind of mental health issues, your Matt's anxiety and stuff, and Tim kind of when you lost your friend and stuff, could you feel that kind of emotion of loneliness in what you was going through?
Well, it's strange, isn't it? Because sometimes when you are in that point, in that place, you don't want to be around other people anyway. So actually, loneliness is a feeling that you can welcome. The problem is when you get to the point where you want to get out of it, that's when it's really hard. So you retreat into something that becomes like a protective shell. We've talked about pushing people away when we've done recorded podcast audio ones, but actually I think my worry about this time is that we're going to convince ourselves we're not lonely, get so used to doing things like this that when we come out of it, we're going to find it really hard to engage with people again. You know, it's going to be much. I popped to the greengrocers today and we were joking about how money is going to become a thing of the past because we're so worried about handling money, and we're getting used to queuing up outside of shops and staying away from people, walking down the street and people put their heads down. You know, it's almost like you don't want to even say hello. So I do think that when we lost Dan, everything was so painful. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I wasn't managing how I felt, and I couldn't cope with how other people were feeling at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a very similar situation. Whatever the government announces today about an extension, we're all coping with it in our own way. I think then to try and cope with the people's difficulties is really hard. And we're going to find that we're going to enter that like protective isolation, if you like, emotionally, as well as physically distance-wise.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Matt. How did it kind of affect you?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I was particularly, as I mentioned before, I was kind of like stuck in the house for a while. If you go back to podcast 1, you'll be able to hear the full story. But I think when I started getting back out there, ironically, I felt just as lonely, really. I remember, you know, I was still at sixth form at the time and I was going in there and I was kind of sitting there and I wasn't connecting with anyone or anything around me, which sounds strange to say. It's kind of that thing, isn't it, of being in a room full of people, but just feeling like you're on your own. You're the only person who's feeling that way, and you know, which ironically sometimes isn't true anyway. But you feel like you're the only person who feels like that, and you're the only person who's struggling, and you, like Tim says, you don't want to deal with other people's stuff as much as your own. You know, it's just as difficult to deal with the way other people are feeling as it is to deal with how you feel. You know, I think that's one of the difficulties of this sort of lockdown situation we're in now, is people are going to be living with whoever they're living with, or they're on their own. You know, there's no choice. You are where you are, and you have to do what you have to do. I think for those of us who are living with people, it's just as difficult. You know, I'm very, very sure there are times where Laura wants me to go away and get out of the house, and so she can be on her own. I'm not easy to live with. You know, and I think we all need a bit of time alone sometimes as well, don't we? So when we've got 4 of us in the house and it's all a bit manic and a bit chaotic every day, it can get to you. And I think vice versa, if you're on your own, it must be really difficult to fill those hours, and every day must just feel like, you know, you're trying to get something to fill that time with and drag it out. And I think I'd struggle with both, to be honest.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, if you follow the podcast, I will put some links and stuff around on the Facebook page and in and around this video. But I really suggest you go back and have a listen to some of the earlier ones where we do get into Tim's story and Matt's story, so you get a bit more of an understanding of what we're on about. But yeah, for me, I did genuinely feel, I felt that emotion of loneliness. Obviously, like Matt says, when you are going through some stuff, you tend to close the walls in, don't you? And then you tend to put this barrier up where you don't want anybody to come in, and then obviously nothing comes out. And you just kind of shield yourself from the outside world, and nothing else can come in and get you, like. But I definitely had that emotion because being bullied at school and stuff, and then I didn't really say anything about it. And I just had that emotion of feeling lonely. Like Matt said, I'd go out to social things. I'd be out with my friends and family events and stuff, and I'd try and hide it as much as I could. But coming out of that was really, really difficult. Like Tim said, coming out of it and trying to kind of socialise again is really, really hard. It's really hard to come out of that when you haven't said anything for me, it was like years, decades, but then you sat in front of a computer and you're talking about it like this. So yeah, loneliness is a big thing during this lockdown. I think, like Matt says, if you have that family life, it's tricky because obviously it's not the same, is it? One of you's either at work or one of you's out doing things, and one of you's got the kids out in there. Similar to Tim, you're normally with your lovely wife and daughter, but now everything's changed, and Tim's wife's had to move out, and it's a bit of a culture shock. You can't have that interaction with each other. So loneliness plays a big part in this. I think if you could offer like any advice to anybody, I know we've got to be careful giving advice, but to kind of combat loneliness, Tim, what would you kind of say?
I think it's about being really honest about how you feel, especially when we're communicating like this electronically, by not necessarily by video, but by messages and things like that. It's not focusing on negative things, but it is actually saying, do you know what, this has been hard. I know you can't change it. Just to explain, my wife hasn't left me. It's so awful living with me. She's moved out. Yeah, so she's moved out with her mum, who lives on her own and is quite vulnerable. So we decided very early on, before it really got into it, that it would be better if she was there, just in case one of us got unwell and she couldn't go at all. So yeah, we text a lot, we FaceTime a lot, and what we said was, if we're feeling down, we'll just say it. And I know I can't go and try and make her feel better, but it's far better than sitting there going, oh yeah, everything's fine, everything's great, everything's wonderful. And then as soon as you finish that conversation, coming away and thinking, but it isn't. Actually, it's really hard. It's really tough. I can't do the things that normally bring me that bit of joy, that normally lift me a bit. Now, I'm not saying we should live in that awful place, but let's acknowledge the fact that we're in a tough time, that people in our generation have never seen anything like this before, ever. No. We're not equipped for it. We just don't know what to do. It came out the blue, and it's going to carry on for some time. Yeah. So my thing is, recognize how you feel, be honest about it, express it, and then do something that will bring you a little bit of happiness.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with that. Matty, what would you say? Obviously, you're in that kind of family dynamic.
I couldn't agree more with Tim, to be honest. I mean, it is difficult as well when you're, like I said, when there's a few of you in the house, and taking those times to kind of admit that it's not easy is difficult, because you kind of just need to crack on and get on with it in some respects. And it's that horrible thing, isn't it, of putting how we feel to one side so we can crack on with what needs to be done. The mouths need to be fed and things like that. So there's still things that need to happen. You can't just shut down completely. So I think there is a tendency to ignore how we feel because we're just so desperate to achieve some sort of normality, which is tough, really tough at this time. I think anyone who's struggling with being isolated, I think the most difficult thing about this at the minute is the whole phrase that's come out of it is social distancing. Well, we are social beings, and being distant from people socially is hard. It's really hard. Like Mark said, I'm missing just having a chat with the guys from work and taking the piss out of each other, to be honest. I miss that. I miss that day to day, having to go at people and winding people up, and I think we're all missing that element of going about what we usually do. Will this make people stop and reevaluate things afterwards? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it, if it did, and we kind of come out the back end of it with a positive of realising what is really important. I think the other thing to realise now is there's going to be a massive economic effect, and we're not going to see the end of this for another 5-6 years maybe now, economically. So again, that's going to put stresses and pressures on people. What I would say to people is, like Tim said, just recognise the moment and kind of live within that now. And we can't do anything about what's going to happen soon. We can't. We can't do anything about what we've been told to do. That it is what it is. So it's about recognising what we can achieve and what we can do within that. Like Tim says, do those little things that make you happy. If that's reading a book for an hour, do it. If it's watching a film, do it. If it's listening to some music, even if you've only got 10 minutes in your day, listen to some music and do it. It's about those little wins at the minute. Get those little wins wherever you can, and we'll be all right. We've been through worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I agree with the guys totally. I use the hour of exercise. Use that hour. Go out and just, you can go out. I think that's what people don't, obviously you can't go visit your friends, and obviously it is tricky. But you can go outside, you can go sit in the garden. It's lovely outside today. But, you can go sit in a park. You can go down to, I go down to St Andrew's Quay on the front. If you're from Hull, from Mr. Choose, you can walk all the way down the front. And there's benches and stuff. You can just go sit down there and just get yourself kind of outside and just see the outside world. And whatever you do that makes you happy, do that more often. It's the same with anything, isn't it? Whatever makes you happy, just do that more. So that's my advice, really. Is you can actually go outside and just go and have a walk. If you want to set yourself a challenge, just run a mile. It might kill you, but it'll actually give you some endorphins and actually make you feel a bit better. It's a sense of.
I did Joe Wick PE the other day with Oliver, and I nearly died. It's hard.
I don't do out like that. Our gym does sessions like that, and I did one last night, and I said to Tim before we started recording, I am in bits. So being sat like this is not exactly good for my legs.
Yeah.
But so do the things that make you happy, like Joe Wick's PE. That's not the best thing to do. A connection with that loneliness, Matt said about relationships in the house. I want to touch on relationships, but I want to go back to our stories a little bit and kind of weave it back into that. Do you know when you started talking publicly? I know this is great. You can actually see my hands now. If you follow the podcast, I talk on my hands, but it's really hard. But now you can actually see my hands. But from our stories and stuff, when you started talking to people, did you find any change in the relationships? Did anything change? Did people leave and obviously say, oh, whatever? Or did you find people kind of rallied around you a bit different? Or did you see that kind of a change in the relationship?
I think in my mind, I anticipated a change and almost projected that change onto people, but actually they didn't change. I think it gave them an opportunity to support me better because they knew more what was going on. But yeah, I spent quite a while being entirely paranoid about what people would change, about what they thought about me and how they felt about me, and they didn't at all. So yeah, it didn't. The people who were close to me wanted to support me anyway, so that didn't. It just gave them a bit of permission to do so, I think.
Matt?
Yeah, I think because of the age I was, sort of 16, 17, it was kind of, I was in two very fickle worlds. Obviously, the world of sport, playing cricket at the level that I did was quite fickle. We create a new one and move on because I've costed them money. The long and short of it is that's what happens. Create a new one and move on. So I kind of lost those relationships. What's been quite ironic is during this sort of period with a bit of the social media stuff and things going on, I've actually reconnected with a few people from those days, and it's been good to have a chat with them and realise we weren't that bad. we were all just doing our best, really. That's been nice. And I think the other thing is I did see a change in those people who were probably closer to me at that time in terms of day-to-day life and being at sixth form and stuff, and those kind of relationships did change. There were some people who were absolutely phenomenal with me, and I've never really kind of had the balls to say thank you, I suppose. I'm not very good at doing the emotional stuff. There was one person in particular, she was brilliant with me. She used to come and just sit with me and have a chat, have a coffee or whatever, and we'd sit for hours just talking, and it was good because it was normal, a bit of normality in my life. She was fantastic, and I never really got the chance to say that and thank her, I suppose. We don't really speak much anymore, which is bizarre, but it's the way it is, isn't it? And then, I think that relationships close to me did sort of drop off, and a few people disappeared, a few reappeared, and I'm the kind of person that if I like people in life, I kind of, whenever I want to see them, I'll chat with them and have a laugh with them. And I could sort of scroll through my contacts list now, and there's probably 101 people I want to speak to all at one time. But it's A, not knowing what to say, B, being too frightened to say it, and the other thing of, well, they probably won't want to speak to me anyway.
We mentioned that in the last video, didn't we, about using this time when we're in lockdown to reach out and just reconnect with people and just check everyone's all right and stuff like that. And I've done it a little bit. I spoke to my mate in Sri Lanka. It's just, you know, they're in a different, obviously, environment to us, and just checked in on him. I ain't spoke to him since Christmas, so I just sent him a WhatsApp and said, I hope everything's all right. And spoke to my mate Ed just after Christmas and stuff, and trying to get just keep in touch with people. And relationship wise, mine was tricky because obviously I was in a marriage, so like I had this little secret that I didn't really talk about, and which was really obviously played a big part in the marriage breaking down. And it's just that I just lived in a superficial world. Do you know what I mean? I lived this act where I was all right, and really I wasn't. So yeah, relationship wise, it played a big part, especially linking it in with loneliness. I did feel a little bit lonely as well. I feel a bit lonely now. You know, I'm not ashamed to say it. You know, shock horror, live at home, divorced. It's a tricky situation, you know. Yeah, I found relationships very difficult. I found even getting back into a relationship, I would say, very, very, very weird. Just because I don't know, it's just a weird thing for me at the minute. But my friendship circles been the same since. We've always had a core of, you know, got good 5 or 6 people who college friends who have always been in and around. You know, we have a thing now where we can talk to each other. We're adults now, you know, we're pushing our 40s. So yeah, we're pushing our 40s. So we're adults now. But yeah, I found relationships. So obviously my breakdown, my marriage, very difficult, and telling everyone about it, and then being on telly isn't exactly the easiest thing to do when you go in public and stuff like that. There's no going back from that.
No.
Were you on telly?
Yeah, I was, mate. Yeah. Oh, I've had an email this morning, actually. I'll mention it to you later on. I've told Tim already. I'll put it on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found relationships very difficult, and in and out of relationships, talking about it and stuff. It's just something I have to deal with. But you know, you get on with it, don't
you? I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, I think probably one thing that we've all discovered about each other from sitting and talking so much and so often is that we are quite resilient in a way. You know, I think that possibly a lot more resilient than we actually realised. And I think from doing this and from speaking to people who I've spoke to about it and stuff, who've said that they're possibly struggling, and it is the thing of, you are probably a bit more resilient than you give yourself credit for. You know, and it's sometimes not the healthiest thing to look back all the time, but to look back from where you were and see where you are now. I think that's something that I've got from this massively. It is that when I sit with you guys and we have discussions about things, and you know, I found some of them really, really hard to talk about, but then when you kind of, you know, and Tim said to me previous, you know, just look where you are compared to where you are. And it's bizarre, you know, that I was in that frame of mind. I was doing those things, and to be frank, a lot of the time putting myself in serious harm's way. And now I couldn't be much further from that. There are still days where, and I think that anybody has down days and days where they show. Yesterday for me was just a day where I just felt really, really crap, and I had no reason to feel that way. It was just another day. Just wasn't interested in anything. You know, I think that happens, and it's about recognising that does happen and that will happen, and you know, and that tomorrow's a new day. Sleep it off and come back. You know, and I think we've bred that little bit of resilience. So I think, you know, anyone who is struggling at the minute, I think you're definitely not going to be the only one. This will have a huge impact on mental health of a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And people who consider themselves, you know, I know that people talk about mental health always in the context of mental illness. It can be very different. You know, we all have a mental health to look after. Mental illness is very different. And I think people get the two things confused. So this will be having a huge impact on a lot of people's mental health, without a doubt. You know, get out there, have a chat. And do you know what? If anybody does want a chat or anything, I'll pop up in the comments below this and just message me. We'll have a chat. We'll do whatever. I'm not bothered. I've got plenty of time. I think.
Right, boys. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've got loads of things to do. But thanks for coming on, guys. We're going to try and keep these as regular as we can. Obviously, we've got fucking God knows how long. Yeah. So, we will touch on these subjects again. If you want us to talk about anything in the comments, pop it down below, and we'll have a chat about it. But thanks, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day in the sun.
Excellent. See you later.
I'll put some links and everything up here. And thanks for listening and watching. And we'll catch you very soon. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. See you later.